Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Desiree Duffy, and this is the Books That Make You show. And we are talking about books that make you celebrate Pride Month because, yes, June is Pride Month. And it brings with it this year, I feel, an especially timely and poignant message because there are so many books with LGBTQ plus themes, history, messages. These are among some of the books that are mostly topping some of the lists in book bannings and book challenges. And that's why we have author Lee Wind back on the show. And he's talking about Queer as a $5 Bill, the podcast, which is dropping 36 episodes in this month of June. And it's both as a celebration of Pride and also a response to the banning of those books and the disinformation and the terror that's sweeping teens across the United States. Now, Lee holds a master's degree in education from Harvard. He writes many stories, different stories to empower kids and teens to be their authentic selves and change the world. And he's been with us before on the show. You might remember, I think it was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, maybe, that you're with us, Lee. Now, outside of writing, Lee is one of those people. You're a Renaissance man in many ways. You are doing so many great things. You are with the Independent Book Publishers Association, the IBPA, as their director of education programs, and for the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators as their official blogger. He's the organizer of the Queer Kid Lit Creators Community, and he runs the popular blog, I'm Here, I'm Queer, What the Hell Do I Read? Words his teenage self only dreamed of saying. So he is somebody who can speak from experience. He has many upcoming titles and past titles, and we'll talk about your many books. Upcoming titles include The Gender Binary is a Big Lie, the YA novel, A Different Kind of Brave, and the inspired by queer history picture book, Love of the Half-Eaten Peach. And Lee is from Los Angeles, where he lives with his husband of more than 25 years, and they have a grown daughter. Oh my gosh, she's grown already, Lee. I remember talking to you, sitting, having coffee, and I think at the time she was still in high school. So, oh my God, congratulations on all of your many successes, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be back.
Okay, and there is so much for us to talk about. So we want to talk about your books and your writing, and we want to talk about the book bannings and what's happening in the world right now. But let's start that off with talking a little bit about your podcast, because your podcast is the thing that's framing everything, because you're addressing this in a very outstanding way. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, thanks. Sure. So I have this theory that when bad things are happening, that sometimes we want to do something, but we don't know what to do. It's sort of like, I'm gay, and that's sort of like the G of LGBTQIA2+, so the current like acronym for our queer community. And what I found in my life journey is that really it's all about being an ally to everybody else in my community, but not just in my community, also to women and to people of color and disabled people and indigenous people and to sort of everyone that isn't getting a fair shake, that isn't getting represented, that isn't getting resourced in the way that sort of straight, cis, white, heterosexual men from Europe get their props, right? Like, they're in all the history books. And so in that bit about being an ally, what I've come to realize is that there's no such thing as a silent ally. And I think that for me, I was sitting there and I was hearing about all these anti-gay laws happening across the country, about the book banning, about, in particular in Florida, they passed a law they were debating a law about expanding the Don't Say Gay edict on teachers and in libraries and librarians in schools to say that you couldn't talk about queer people even existing in from it used to be from grades K through 4, but now they've expanded it to up till 12th grade. So they're saying that kids need to be 18 or over to even hear that families like mine exist, that I'm a guy who fell in love with another guy and we had a daughter and we raised her and she's off in college, and like that is crazy. And people are having to hide who they are. And there's this chilling effect that's happening. When my book, I have a nonfiction book for kids too called No Way They Were Gay. And when that got banned, people were like, congratulations, because it seems like a badge of honor. But it actually kind of, unless you're in that top 10 books that the ALA puts out the list, the most banned books in America, those books they're doing great, right? Like they actually are seeing a lot of sales. But for most of the books that are being banned, there's two things that are happening. One is that it's preventing your book from being acquired by other librarians and other teachers because they're like, oh, I don't want to be, there's a fire over there. I don't want it to come over to me. And the other thing is this general chilling effect. And that's actually the intent of the banners. What they're trying to do, it's a very organized, concerted effort to sort of push back. A lot of what I do in my books is try to, take stuff from history and get past those hundreds of years of historians that have sort of been like telling us lies about the truth of history and kind of painting this false facade and getting behind that and letting the voices of the past sort of come forward, letting us hear the stories of men who loved men and women who loved women, people who loved without regard to gender, and people who lived outside the gender binary. And so in that, when No Way They Were Gay was banned in a couple of states and called obscene on a bunch of lists, it just kind of, I just kept thinking, what can I do? Because I'm not, it's like we all have to figure out how can I be an ally? How can I help with what's happening right now? So my very first book was called Queer as a $5 Bill. And it was a novel about basically that came out of the letters that Abraham Lincoln wrote Joshua Fry Speed. And these letters convinced a bunch of people, including me, that Abraham was in love with Joshua. I know, mind blowing, right? Like Abraham's on Mount Rushmore and on the $5 bill. But when you read the letters, I think that it's very clear that he was in love with Joshua. And that had I known that when I was 11 or 13 or 15, like it would have totally changed my whole life. So I wrote a novel about a kid that discovers that Abraham Lincoln was gay and that also was closeted like I was, and then sets out to out Abraham Lincoln. And he does it online and it goes viral and it becomes this huge media firestorm. And in doing that, so much evidence came up that I thought maybe there's a nonfiction book here. So Lincoln is one of the chapters in No Way They Were Gay. I had a lot of trouble finding a publishing home for that book. So I ended up kickstarting it. As you said, I'm a blogger. I've been blogging for a lot of years. And so I did a Kickstarter and I raised enough money. I paired with a nonprofit. And the idea was, let's get the book out into the hands of kids that can make a difference in their lives. So we ended up raising enough money to publish the book professionally, hire the designer and the editors and I pull together a team to put out a really professional book. And we also raised enough to give away 910 copies to LGBTQ teens. I teamed up with a nonprofit called Brave Trails. So that was really exciting and cool. And the book came out in 2018. We also did an audiobook at that time, and I paid to have the audio. My dad helped me. It was expensive. We paid to have the audiobook produced. And I was like, okay, cool. And then, there was a crazy story with getting No Way They Were Gay published. It was purchased by a big, one of the big 5 publishers, and then our former President Trump was elected, and then the publisher freaked out and canceled the book, and then I had to find a new agent and lots of confusion and craziness, and then finally Lerner published No Way They Were Gay in 2021. So I have these books and I'm sitting here thinking, well, what can I do? I am getting back to the podcast. So podcasts, like, Desiree, they're amazing, right? And there's no barrier to entry, right? Anybody with a smartphone can listen to a podcast. Anybody can access it. And I thought, well, you know what? I actually own the rights to Queer as a $5 Bill. I own the rights to the audiobook. So what if I go around the book banners and I just put the audiobook up online as a podcast, and every episode is a chapter? And I was like, ooh, I like this idea, because it kind of directly is there, for kids 13 and up, and really anybody, and it's free forever. And I'm just like, and I can do this because I have a day job. So it's not like I need to make my, to pay my family's bills off of the money I would make from the podcast. There's no money from the podcast. The money I would make from the audio book. And so I got very excited about it. And then I thought, ooh, let me contact my publisher Learner and see if I can make the chapter about Lincoln, with all the evidence about Abraham Lincoln loving another guy and all the primary source letters and all the analysis, if I can make that a free PDF download. And they said yes. And then we were talking about it, and I was getting excited, and I was like, ooh, what if we did a bonus episode where we do an audio version of that chapter of Lincoln from No Way They're Gay? Because they never leveraged the book to be an audiobook. It's kind of complicated, and it didn't happen. So they were like, yes, okay, we'll let you do that. So that's been really fun, because one of the cool things in the book is that all the primary sources are in bold, because I think it's really important for everybody to be able to know when they're reading a book, what was primary sources, what's the real people in history, what did they say, and then what's the analysis, what's the person writing this history saying. So I thought, well, how do I do that in an audiobook? And I thought, different voices. So it's been really fun. My husband's an actor, and we've been reaching out to his network, and we've been casting different, people, like who's the voice of General Sherman, who's the voice of President Buchanan, who's the voice of Abraham Lincoln. And so that's been really fun to have it all come together. And the bonus episode releases the last week of June. So it's every Thursday in June. Another 7 chapters gets released, another 7 episodes. So I'm really excited about that.
That's amazing. And you talk about what people can do, and what you've done is just, you've created this entire show and this body of information and this research. So there's a lot for us to dig into here. And by the way, I just want to let people know that No Way They Were Gay was the book that you were talking about a couple of years ago when it first came out. So if people want to go back and rewatch or re-listen that show, they absolutely can. Just go back into our archives here on the Books That Make You show. One of the things that you bring to the table, Lee, is your own unique experience. And I invite you in your own words just to talk about, so that maybe parents, teachers, educators, politicians, if they want to listen, will understand what it is from the point of view of a young person who is dealing with messages that make them feel confused or not as informed as they could be. Can you talk about that for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I remember being 11 years old and being with my family in New York City, and we went to an ice cream store in Lower Manhattan, and it was like a place for the tourists, and it was sort of I guess a gay neighborhood. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't even know such a thing existed. But I remember there was like a neon rainbow in the window, which would have been a tell had I known that it was a tell. And inside the store was 2 young, maybe 20 something, servers, and they were dressed up almost like in a kind of drag. The woman was wearing like leather harness and a leather whip on her, and pants, and sort of a bra, and very dominatrixy, sort of sexy. And I wasn't looking at her at all, because I was looking at the guy in the leather harness and the torn jeans, and I was like, wow. And in that moment, it all came together, and I was like, oh, wow. Looking at these two sort of options on the ice cream server menu. Sorry, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to grow up to be the kind of guy that guy would sort of flirty smile at, and it all came together in that moment. And I don't even know how I I just sort of fumbled my way through asking for the ice cream I wanted. And I was sort of euphoric, and I was like floating as we walked out of the ice cream store, and we were walking down the sidewalk, and it wasn't even 2 minutes later, and suddenly everybody in my family started to laugh about how crazy and sick and like zoo animals that had been. And I just remember just feeling crushed, and that the people that loved me best in the world could never know the truth of my heart. And like really, like within 5 minutes, I figured out who I was, and I realized I had to stay absolutely closeted if I was going to survive. And that was so difficult. And it took me 14 years. It took me until I was 25 years old to finally come out as a gay man. And there was a lot of drama, and it was very hard. But so much of what I do today is to try to create some safe space so kids that don't have to go through what I did. They don't have to hide. They don't have to act. They don't have to date women when they don't feel it. That's not fair for the women. It's certainly, tragic all around. And that sort of thing, actually, that was the key to to uncovering all this queer history, is that I dated girls through high school and college and grad school. And I always judged that it was the right thing to do, but I didn't feel it. And then I listened to a talk, and this guy was talking about the letters between Abraham Lincoln and Joshua Fry Speed that convinced him that Abraham was in love with Joshua. And I was like, that can't be true. But I went to the library and I got out a book, and in it, there's a letter that Abraham writes Joshua. They've lived together for 4 years. Joshua moved back to Kentucky, married a woman named Fanny. And then Abraham writes him a letter, and he asks him in the letter, "Are you now in feeling as well as judgment glad that you're married as you are?" And I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's exactly how I felt. That's a reflection of me in history. I'm not anything as great as Abraham Lincoln, but like, wow. So that was how the whole thing started. So I feel like they're banning books because books are empathy machines. They're like, every kid has a smartphone pretty much, right? Like they're not gonna prevent them from knowing that queer people exist at this point, that the cat's out of the bag. We exist, and we've existed all throughout time, throughout history, all the way around the world. That they've done a pretty good job at hiding. I'm trying to resurface those stories, but they're not going to fool young people into thinking that men don't love men, or women don't love women, or people don't love without regard to gender, or people don't live outside the gender binary. That's out. So they're banning books very intentionally, because books give you the opportunity to live inside someone else's skin. They give you the opportunity to look at someone that on the outside may seem very different from you and feel that shared humanity that you have, to resonate with their experiences, with your experiences. Writers make this mistake all the time. They think that they want their books to be relatable to everyone. So they just write nothing. They write the most bland possible character, because they're so afraid if they're specific, if they say the character has red hair, then nobody will identify with that character who doesn't have red hair. And it's the exact opposite. The more specific you are, the more real you are in creating your characters, that truth of it is what we resonate with. It doesn't matter that I don't even have hair. I will resonate with that character. And the other thing that a book can do in terms of being an empathy machine is giving you a sense of who you are, like a reflection of who you are, your story being told. There's something so empowering to that, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, knowing that you have this, that you've been seen, right? In almost like the Avatar movie way, I see you, right? That is really, really powerful. And I think that on both of those fronts, books are quite remarkable, and that's why they're banning them.
I love that you say that books are empathy machines. That really resonates. And for the parents or the teachers or somebody who feels that they don't understand, I guess my message to them would be, just remember that your child is looking at you for guidance. You're their parent or their teacher or somebody in their life that can help them. And I want to circle that back around, because when you talk about how each of us can respond and what we're doing, one of the things that's happening in schools and libraries across the nation, and you touched on this before, is the people who are making those decisions, they don't want to get caught up in the fray. They don't feel that they have a horse in the race, so they'd rather just step back. They don't want to have their judgment on which books they're getting for the library even thought of. They don't even want to go there. So we have this state of people that are just kind of saying, okay, I don't want to get in the middle of this. This isn't my fight. This isn't something that has to do with me. What might you say to those people who don't feel it's something that impacts them, their life, their family?
All right. Well, there's two things. There's so much. I think that there's a bunch of different versions of the quote, but Martin Niemöller, he was in World War II. He was put in one of the concentration camps, and he left. And he said that, I didn't speak up when they came for the communists because I wasn't a communist, and I didn't speak up when they came for the Jews because I wasn't a Jew, and I didn't speak up. And it goes through a couple more, and then he says, and finally, when they came for me, there was no one left to speak up.
Yeah.
So, and that's not a direct quote, but I do have actually a quote from history that I want to share. Bayard Rustin, he was an openly gay man who was a leader in the civil rights movement. And he was actually the guy that organized the March on Washington, where Dr. Martin Luther King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. He was asked later in his life if he had any advice for other Black gay activists. And he was like, yeah. And here's what he said. They should try to build coalitions of people for the elimination of all injustice. Because if we want to do away with the injustice to gays, it will not be done because we get rid of the injustice to gays. It will be done because we are forwarding the effort for the elimination of injustice to all. And we will win the rights for gays or Blacks or Hispanics or women within the context of whether we are fighting for all. And I think that that's what I would tell those people, because it is a battle for all of us. It is, they are attacking one group now, but they will attack another group next. And we all have to stand together, because together we're actually stronger. I mean, I just heard about, a proposal to restrict the age of voting to not let anyone under 25 vote. And that is directly because of the demographics of our country are changing. And I believe under 18 now, we are majority non-white. And so there, it's very ironic or sad that the people in power have long, said that, they believe in democracy. They don't really, they believe in their power, and they are manipulating our electoral system to entrench that power by trying to, change the boundaries of districts and restrict voting rights, because they want to hold on to that power so desperately. And what we're seeing now, this concerted effort to ban books and to ban gender affirming care for kids, it's all part of this sort of like desperate clenching on to, wanting to prevent other people from having a place at the table, which is kind of ridiculous. It's not like we can't build a bigger table. Like, let's build a bigger table. Let's let everyone feel like they have a place at it. And really, you look at the statistics, this goes to language too. We say lifestyle choice when we refer to people that are queer. Sometimes in the straight community, they refer to like, oh, well, I respect your lifestyle choice. Having long hair is a lifestyle choice. Your choice when you're queer is that you're either going to be authentic about who you are, or you are going to lie like I did, and you're going to act and you're going to pretend to be somebody else because of the expectations that are put upon you by society or your family. So like, that's really the choice. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to construct larger and larger closets to shove us all back into. It's yuck, no. and we have to be really aware, and it's already happening. It's not just queer people being targeted. In Florida, they are targeting Black history and Black books too. They are literally, banning books simply because the author is Black. this is the beginning. This is a tipping point and an inflection point in our history. The pendulum is swinging wildly ever since Obama's second, term and Trump coming in, and sort of the whole Make America Racist Again movement. Okay, one more quote from Bayard Rustin, because again, so much of what I'm about is like surfacing the voices of the people from history. So Bayard was asked also in 1986. He was talking about sort of the job of the gay community. And he said, the fact of the matter is there is a small percentage of people in America who understand the true nature of the homosexual community. There's another small percentage who will never understand us. Our job is not to get those people who dislike us to love us. Nor was our aim in the civil rights movement to get prejudiced white people to love us. Our aim was to try to create the kind of America legislatively, morally, and psychologically, such that even though some whites continue to hate us, they could not openly manifest that hate. That's our job today, to control the extent to which people can publicly manifest anti-gay sentiment. He said that in 1986.
Yeah.
But he could have said it yesterday, right? Like, that is exactly our job today. Like, we have to get to be the kind of America where, legislatively, morally, psychologically, people cannot openly manifest their bigotry, their hate, their misogyny, all these laws about controlling women's bodies. They're not, language. They're not pro-life. They don't care about the life once the child is born. They want to control women's bodies. Okay, the word homosexual, this is a problem word because it makes straight people obsess about how queer people have sex. If we focused instead on the love that holds me and my husband and our daughter together as a family is the same love that holds everybody else's family together, and the word was homo-lovual instead of homosexual, we'd be having very different cultural conversations. Like, words, I'm a writer, right? Words matter. So let's push back on the words. Let's not let them set the agenda by using words that actually are harmful to us.
Yeah. And again, they're harmful to kids that are trying to understand their place in the world and how everything works. And as you said, it goes all the way up in some cases to K-12 at this stage in the game. And you talk
about, how does it hurt, right? I'm sorry. I'm so excited.
Okay.
How does it hurt? How does it? The governor of Florida just was like, they're trying to impose this, pronouns, in elementary school. How does it hurt you if somebody uses a different pronoun? If somebody uses they, them pronouns, how are you injured in this? I just don't understand it. It's completely unnecessary. It's like the fight against gay marriage. Like, if you don't like gay marriage, don't get gay married, right?
Right.
If you don't like they, them pronouns to identify a person, a singular person, then don't use those pronouns, but respect other people. The whole reason I started my blog was, almost in 2007, a long time ago, 16 years ago, was that there was a children's picture book by Todd Parr that was very sweet. It was called The Family Book, and it had pictures of some families look alike, and it was like a family of dogs, and they all looked alike, and some families look different, and it had a bunch of different animals in a tree. Some families adopt children, and it was like a bunch of ducks in a row, and on the back of one duck was a penguin, and then it had, and some families have two moms and two dads, and it had, it had a picture of, two women and two men. It was very cartoony, very sweet, and it just kept going. There was a review online on one of the retailers that said, if you tear out the page with the two moms and two dads, this is a lovely book about diversity.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, way to miss the entire point of diversity, right? Way to blow it. And for that retailer, there was nothing wrong with that review. But for me, I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, there has to be a safe space online where people can find out what are the books with queer characters and themes for kids and teens, because that is gross. And that is so nasty. So it's like that was the impetus for me starting my blog in the first place, because it's so much about safe space, right? Had I felt safe at 11, I wouldn't have been closeted for 14 years, but I didn't feel safe. So what can I do now? It's all right, I'm going to put this book out as a podcast. I'm going to have this conversation with you, and for people listening, I hope that they can listen with their hearts. I think a lot about the quote from Anne Lamott in Bird by Bird. She said, lighthouses don't run all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there and they shine. So I also similarly don't want to convince everyone that I'm right and they're wrong about history. I'm just sort of like, look, I surface these amazing things from history and I think that they're very, very cool. And I'm just going to try to share them. And you can listen or you cannot listen. You can read it, you cannot read it. But hopefully it adds some light to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, definitely, Lee Wind, you are one of those lighthouses. Thank you for doing everything that you do and encouraging others to stand up too. And you mentioned, being aware and, making sure that it's something that you can look at objectively and help in that regard. But there are some things that people can do as well. Maybe show up at that PTA meeting, speak your mind as a parent or a member of the community, support the librarians. And you mentioned the ALA, the American Library Association. Check out their website, look at those books, and maybe not just buy the books that are at the top of the list or the ones that you might recognize. We see that a lot too. Classic books and literature that get banned, and people are like, oh my goodness, how could they ban To Kill a Mockingbird or A Catcher in the Rye? And not realizing the many, many books underneath that are also being banned by authors similar to you. So support those authors, support those books, and let your voice be heard, because it goes back to what you're saying. There are folks in power, and I want to hold on to that power. And what they're doing, unfortunately, is using fear to drive us apart. But this country is the United States of America, and we're united by all of these colors and all of that diversity. And if we can really hold true to that, I think that's what we need to do.
Yes.
Sorry, I just realized, I kind of got on my own soapbox there.
I love it. I take it. I'll stand next to you.
Right on. Well, and I think I was just going to say, it's because you are so inspiring, Lee, and everything that you're saying is just resonating. We're going to need to have you come back because we are hitting up against the clock, but go ahead. You have a thought there.
I just wanted to say that diversity is what makes us so cool, right? That's what makes a society so brilliant and amazing. I mean, you look at nature and there's 8 billion kinds of flowers and we're all like, oh, look at the amazing diversity. But when it comes to people, we're like, I only want to see 2 options here. That's silly, right? Let's celebrate our diversity.
Absolutely. Now, can you give us your website? Let us know where people can go to listen to the podcast. Give us all your details.
Absolutely. So Queer's a $5 Bill, the podcast is available anywhere you listen to podcasts. And my website is my name, LEEWYND.org. So leewind.org.
Thank you.
All the links are there.
Perfect. Yes, you have a great website, great resources for educators and teachers and parents too. A lot going on there. Can you, as we close out the show, can you just back up and maybe show off your bookcase behind you and that wonderful shirt? I love that.
Save lives.
I love that. Thank you, Lee.
This is my rainbow bookcase.
It's beautiful. I love the colors. I love the way you have that all set up. Thank you so much for being here, Lee, and thank you for everything that you do.
Desiree, my pleasure and my joy.
Absolutely. And thank you for being with us today on the Books That Make You show. You can find out more about us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and don't forget to sign up for our Webby award-winning newsletter so you never miss a Books That Make You show or news or information about the books that make us all who we are. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of those books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.